Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting version of Chip Talks podcast. So, today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the endocannabinoid system, and we're going to talk a little bit more about nutrition and how nutrition really affects this system. It turns out that you're a lot more configurable than most of us think. People that are, we'll say, my age, I grew up really ceding my health to the health system, right? So if something was wrong with me, there was no way that I could fix that on my own. I had to go to a doctor. That doctor would examine me. He'd tell me what was wrong with me, and then he'd give me something to, fix whatever it was that was going on with me. Well, that worked great for a little while. We all think, but, did it? And as we evaluate that whole system, is that really what we want? And is that really how we want to behave? I mean, I want a lot more control over my health. I think if you're listening to this podcast, you likely want a lot more control over your health too. So, what we're trying to do through these podcasts is give you information that where you can take back control of your health. The first thing that we have to do is we have to understand how we work at kind of the highest level. And as we begin to understand how we work at the highest level, we can begin to deconstruct that and figure out, kind of what works or what is going wrong kind of in sublevels. So, if you look at disease, to me, and again, I study this every day. So this is what I do. And God love your doctor or, your local research or whatever, but they don't do what I do every day. They don't live in this research every day. And I do, so I've got a little bit different, let's say more robust view of what seems to be going on with a lot of us right now. And that's chronic inflammation, right? So we all kind of have heard about chronic inflammation, but chronic inflammation doesn't just happen. It takes something, okay? So it takes something. So either we're configuring ourselves, and this is part of the problem, which we're going to talk about, but we're configuring ourselves in a real inflammatory state so that we're going to react, in an inflammatory way. Like cells want to react. They get stimulus, they want to react, they do things. And so you as a whole system want to react. You get stimulus, you want to do things. But are we setting this vehicle up, potentially by what we're eating in a very reactive and an inflammatory, situation that we don't have to? So yes, it turns out yes, we're going to talk that through. But that is one of the biggest things that's wrong with us right now. And if we're set in a real inflammatory state, it doesn't take much of an infection or an insult or an allergy to put us in crisis, to put us in an inflammatory crisis. So it appears right now that we all are walking around just ultra reactive in the inflammatory way. And when we get anything, any kind of infection, if we get H. pylori or hook-rounded pinworm, or we get a cold, or we get things like COVID, or we have allergies, again, wham, we have just this overreaction that's just insane. And it causes us a lot of problems. It causes us a lot of problems. Again, obesity is something that is just pegged out endocannabinoids, right? So it's way more endocannabinoids than you normally should have. And that's something that is, happens in chronic obesity. So why? Bam, we're just chronically inflamed all the time. So let's talk that through. How does that work in the endocannabinoid system? And are there, ways that we can, let's say, feed the endocannabinoid system to change this profile that we all have right now? Wouldn't that be cool? Then it turns out the answer is yes, which is great. All right. So let's begin to deconstruct this a little bit. So let me kind of get over where you guys are now, where I can see what you're seeing. Okay. Well, first of all, right off the bat, wow, Chip, you throw up this sciencey, complicated slide. Holy cow, what does this all mean? Well, let me talk you through this because a lot of people don't, we hear a lot about CB1 neuroreceptors and how the endocannabinoid system works, but what do they look like? I'm a kind of a visual guy. I mean, I need to see what things look like. Now, hopefully you can see my little cursor moving around. And for those of you listening on Buzzsprout, I'm sorry, I'm looking at kind of this complicated graphic that has a CB1 neuroreceptor embedded in a cell wall. So this stuff that you're seeing right here is the cell wall. This is the CB1 neuroreceptor. So what it does is it allows signaling. So things can signal it from the, and this is the inside of the cell. So things can signal the CB1 neuroreceptor from the inside of the cell, and he'll sing out and signal things outside of the cell. Or things like anandamide can impact the CB1 neuroreceptor and will cause him to basically signal through resonance, through vibration and frequency, to these other guys to do actions. And so this G coupled protein reaction here is a big broadcast, like a big signal. There's ways that you can hit CB1 where it's a kind of a quiet signal. So, you might want to broadcast to a whole lot of cells, and then you'd use G protein signaling, or you might want to signal to one cell, and then you'd use like beta arrestin type signaling. So anyway, but this is a CB1 receptor embedded in a cell wall. And again, he's being acted on by anandamide. Now, if you happen to take THC, anandamide could be replaced by THC. So THC would also act on the CB1 neuroreceptor. Now, this down here is a little bit more robust view. So this is the postsynaptic terminal. So this is at the kind of the end of things, but this is where a lot of stuff gets initiated as far as like cellular action, right? So if you have kind of CB1 action here at the presynaptic terminal, again, what's going to happen at the postsynaptic terminal as the CB1 neuroreceptors are being impacted by anandamide, and again, this is the outside of the cell, this is the inside of the cell, you have all different kinds of actions that can happen. So you have calcium actions, you have cyclic AMP actions, which produce ATP, you've got ethanol amide production, and you've got anandamide degradation by fatty acid amyl hydrolase. So you've got this is a system that happens in nerves, and it happens bam, 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 bam on demand when your nerves fire, which is really freaking cool. So these endocannabinoids are actually manufactured on demand. But anyway, this is a little bit different. We hear a lot, well, Chip, explain the endocannabinoid system. Well, it's CB1, CB2, and they're impacted by anandamide and 2-arachnonucleic acid inside of our body. Well, this is kind of what it looks like in a cell. So again, anandamide impacts CB1 at the presynaptic here, but down here, anandamide is impacting CB1 at the postsynaptic, and you have all these other cellular actions that can happen from that impact. In fact, the endocannabinoid system as our master regulatory system would have to have mastery over every single aspect of what goes on in that cell, meaning what gets made by that cell, what songs that cell is going to sing, everything about that cell, the endocannabinoid system needs to control, and does really through these actions. So this little guy sitting in a cell wall, the CB1 receptor, that's a pretty important guy in how you work, right? You can see here on this bottom slide too, you have potassium, kind of the outflow of potassium from a cell, and it's positively charged. And you also have the inflow of calcium to a cell, and it's also positively charged. Now, when a cell wants to really do work, it's going to change its polarity. So it's going to become a lot more negative, let's say, on the inside of it. So electrically, it's going to want to become a lot more negative. So as a cell gets more advanced and a cell needs to do more work, he'll kind of close his boundaries, and he wants to increase his electronegativity. Well, guess what cuts that back? When you dump calcium in the cell, that dumps that back. And so as far as excitatory actions at a cell, the endocannabinoid system helps calm everything down. So he's the guy that's really kind of, cells will want to do this. And as they want to do things, they're going to increase their electronegativity. How? By pumping calcium out of the cell. Potassium out of the cell. So they'll want to increase their electronegativity. Well, sometimes that gets too overstimulated, and the endocannabinoid system has to kind of shut that down and shut that back. And the way it does it is with calcium, by inbound calcium into the cell by CB1 action, which is pretty cool. Okay. Now, we're going to get into kind of self-configuration a little bit, right? So nutrition really in the endocannabinoid system. So, physically, this is kind of what's going on. Where does anandamide come from? It doesn't come from marijuana. It doesn't come from cannabis. It comes from omega-6 fatty acids. Okay, so anandamide comes, your main ligand, or right now your main ligand in your endocannabinoid system, comes from omega-6 fatty acids, which is interesting, right? You also, there's two essential fats that we have to eat. And this is well known in science, so that you won't find any of the, let's say, funk that you find around trying to research the endocannabinoid system. This is well supported and well known in science that you have two things your body cannot make that you gotta have. You absolutely gotta have. If you don't get these, you will suffer. You won't be able to do, your body won't be able to function in the way that it should. And those are omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. Okay. Well, guess what is the main fuel and source for the endocannabinoid system, which we'll talk about in a little more depth in a second? Omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. Okay. So if we're not eating omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, you're not allowing your endocannabinoid system to run at full horsepower. It's like powering your car on sugar, right? I'll run my car on sugar. It'll run great. No, it won't. You'll have all kinds of things go wrong. That's the same thing we should all be saying to each other. You're eating what? Corn syrup, corn, omega-6, omega-6, and you're eating no omega-3s. You're running your car on sugar, my friend. You're going to have problems. A diet high in omega-6, omega-3 ratio, more omega-6s than omega-3s, causes an increase in the endocannabinoid signaling and related mediators, which lead to an increased inflammatory state, distributed energy homeostasis, and mood. Sorry, I could read that word for some reason. But anyway, again, the more O6s that you eat over O3s, you're winding this spring that's a very reactionary spring in the inflammatory direction. Now, I don't think any of us want to do that. I don't think any of us really, want to be in a high inflammatory state that, if a mouse, if anything that you're mildly allergic to, a dust mite comes along, you're going to have an incredible inflammatory reaction that's way, way out of bounds for what you should have, right? Dust mite should be like this, not like this. But the way that we're eating right now, because we're not balanced omega-3, omega-6, we set this incredible inflammatory state. So anything is going to set us off, right? Anything is going to cause chronic inflammation. And certainly things like an infection or, a severe allergy are going to be far, far worsened if we're eating more omega-6s over omega-3s. All right. Google has AI now, which is kind of cool. So I was just kind of asking, you can see the questions that I asked Google there. And so feel free to ask them on your own. But it was kind of cool. We don't know if the AI is going to lie to us yet or not, but I will say that I can verify most of these answers. So when you begin to look for it, you're saying, you said, Chip, you said in the last thing that omega-3s are critical to us and none of us are eating enough. We're all eating way too many omega-6s and that's setting this inflammatory state. Where do we find omega-3 fatty acids? Well, here's some good sources. And again, I'm leaving off fish, but fish would be a source of omega-3 and omega-3 fatty acids. The reason that I'm leaving off fish is a great source of EPA and DHA, but EPA and DHA are breakdowns of the main omega-3 molecule called alpha-linolenic acid, and ALA. So what we really want is ALA. And you've got to be careful with the alpha-linolenic because it looks a lot like the alpha-linolic that's omega-6. So I don't know why they did that in literature, but those two words look a lot the same. So make sure it's linolenic, not linolic. Okay? Alpha-linolenic is what you're looking for. Chia seeds are a giant source of omega-3s through ALA, which is exactly what we want. And chia seeds, the other thing that you have to look at in all these foods is how much omega-6 do they have in them, because most of these foods will also have omega-6 fatty acids. And you've got to consider the omega-6s that you're getting, let's say, outside of this source and balance that. You have to add those in, let's say, to what you're getting from chia seeds. So chia seeds are great because they have way more omega-3 than omega-6. And so it's a really good place to go get your omega-3s because of that. And because we already eat so much corn everywhere. But sources, let's say, of omega-6 fatty acids. Flaxseed oil is a good source. Walnuts are a good source. Hemp seeds, hemp protein are a good source. There's an oil on here called camelina oil that's also a really good source. I just don't see it listed. Perilla oil, edamame, so is good in ALA. Brussels sprouts, and canola oil. But with all of these, again, also look up the amount of omega-6s that they have. And you want to balance your omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids 1-to-1 or up to 1-to-4. So you can go as high as, let's say, 1 omega-3 to 4 omega-6s and still kind of be in this really robust and healthy range. We're at 1-to-40 right now, which is horrible, and why we're in the state that we're in. Well, so inflammation. So if I crank up your spring and I set you in this real inflammatory state that most of us are in because we eat way more omega-6s than omega-3s, one of the things that's really going to set me off is food that's inflammatory. So it's going to cause all kinds of problems as I digest it, as it moves through me. It's just going to hurt me, not help me. And so, again, a lot of us eat meat, but meat is in that category, certainly. And red meat really is in that category. And the more processed that red meat is, the more it's in that category. So, meat, really, what we're really after in meat or anything that we're eating is mainly fat. Okay. You're a big fat machine. Our endocannabinoid system, our master regulatory system runs on fat. We store fat. The two main essential fats that we got to have, omega-3 and omega-6, are our main endocannabinoid, kind of where we get our mediators from. All about the fats for you as a vehicle. So you may think it's all about the meat for me as a meat eating thing, but it's not. It's all about the fats. So with fats, if you're eating meat, one of the things that you have to be conscious of is what did that meat eat? Because you're basically eating that meat for the fat, and that fat is only going to be good as what that cow or pig or whatever was fed. If that cow is eating a lot of corn, guess what? That fat is going to have a lot of omega-6 fatty acid in it. And now you're adding to your problem. Not only are you eating the saturated fat, which is inflammatory, but you're also eating a lot of omega-6 if that meat was fed corn. If that meat was fed hemp or omega-3s, any source of omega-3s, then that meat is going to be like a vitamin. It's good. That fat is going to be really good, and it's going to be like a vitamin. So this is why, grass-fed beef and things like that are better as far as health-wise than corn-fed beef. Corn-fed beef is, it's insane. I'm giving you saturated fat, which is inflammatory, and then I'm giving you omega-6s, which is just going to make you inflame like crazy. It's like a death blossom, really. So I know I used to be a big meat eater, and, anybody that ever kind of came at me against meat or anything like that, it just, I wouldn't even listen. But I would encourage you to listen. Based on my knowledge, I've completely quit eating meat. And again, I'm the guy who could eat 6 chicken fried steaks and would eat, challenge me to the 4 quarter pounder meal or, whatever, right? I was that guy. So I don't eat meat anymore for the very reason. I don't like what it does to me. I still crave it. I still think about it. A cheeseburger sounds damn good right now, but every time I eat a cheeseburger, it makes me sick and I don't feel good and I don't really like the taste of it, which is crazy. All right, refined grains. So we all know about gluten, white rice, anything refined, right? Again, the further from nature we take things, I guess is the best way to say it, the worse it's going to be for you. So the less electrons it has in it, the more dead it is, the more processed it is, the worse it's going to be for you. Baked goods, so things that are baked have a tendency to be highly inflammatory. You're baking out really anything good, and you're just kind of keeping the sugars in there, and the sugars, too much sugar can be inflammatory. Fried foods, and the fried foods are mainly because of the short chain fatty acids we fry them in. So you'll hear people talk kind of bad about seed oils a lot, right? And so they're really talking about these short chain oils that are used to fry foods. And there's some really good seed oils. I mean, cranberry seed and black seed and, pumpkin seed oils are really, really, really good for you. You don't cook food in them because you'll ruin them, but they're really good for you. And again, should we fry food in oil? I don't know if that's such a good thing or not. So trans fats, and again, these are short chain fatty acids. Bacteria make short chain fatty acids. They make it, they make them in your biome. I mean, you use them, but you don't want a bunch of bacterial signaling molecules in your body. You want, human mammal signaling molecules in your body, which are dietary fats. So omega-6 fatty acids, oh, look, they've actually listed it, found in meats, oils, margarines, and carbohydrates. So again, you can just go back up this list and see what has omega-6s in it. They're inflammatory. So omega-6 is a large source of inflammation. And then monosodium glutamate. So that's in a lot of it's a food enhancer, a flavor enhancer. And again, it has to be listed on the ingredients. And it actually caused a lot of problems in a lot of people for a time. They almost eliminated it, but now you have to list it. So if you're using MSG, you have to list it. But pay attention to this stuff. Again, no one's going to, it's very clear that there's this situation where, no one's going to help you with any of this. In fact, they're going to tell you not to do. Oh, eat meat, eat at McDonald's, it'll be fine. Go to the doctor if you're sick. Yeah, that works great. And I'm, again, I'll go to the doctor if I'm sick enough, but there's a line there. Your health needs to be in your own hands as much as possible. You lose control, when you go in the health system. You don't have control over what drugs they give you or anything. You can't. I want to go in and be treated with CHIPS natural products. Yeah, that doesn't happen right now. And if we're trying to do that, we're trying to make CHIPS natural products into drugs, and then they can't get away from them. Then they'll have to treat you with them. So we'll play their game for a little bit, but we hope to break down that wall over time. That's just insane that you don't have a choice if you go in the hospital as to what drugs they put in your body. And you're going to trust the, yahoos running around there. So who haven't even been trained about the endo. They don't even know about this. They don't even, everything I'm telling you, they don't even know unless they've self-studied. And hopefully some of you guys have. God love you. But most of them don't even know this, right? They get 3 hours of nutrition. They get nothing on the endocannabinoid system. They don't even know what I'm telling you. It's if you're inflamed, there's some medical reason, and we'll find that medical reason. Oh, here it is. It's according to my PER and my SOP. It's this reason, and it takes this drug. That's what those fellows are taught to do, not critically think. And again, God love them. They went to school for a long time and all that, and they need this information. A lot of them want this information. They want to be really properly taught, and they know kind of what they're doing is not right, or not quite correct, right? This is a better way to say it. All right. Well, so what are some anti-inflammatory foods? And let me tell you this real quick before we go through this list, because this will help going through this list. Saturated fat, inflammatory. Saturated fat should be offset in our diet by monounsaturated fat, which is anti-inflammatory. So it turns out nuts are a real good source of balance between saturated and monounsaturated fat. And they'll usually have a little bit more monounsaturated, which is beneficial to us right now. When you look at stuff that you're eating, and nuts and seed, again, what does King James version of the Bible say that we should eat? Seeds and nuts, be thy meat. Okay. So I'm just going there. And again, that's a commonality. Is what it says in the Bible. So all of us should at least be eating those things. But when you look at seeds and nuts, again, you're going to have different fat profiles, and you're going to have some saturated fat, which is inflammatory, some monounsaturated fat, which is anti. And usually you'll have some omega-3 or omega-6. Omega-3 is anti, omega-6 is inflammatory. Okay, so now let's look at these foods that have anti-inflammatory properties. Olive oil. Olive oil is a source of oleic acid, which is a monounsaturated fat and builds an endocannabinoid called ethanol oleomide, which is your satiety molecule. But of course, olive oil is going to be anti-inflammatory. It has a bunch of monounsaturated fat in it by virtue of the oleic acid. Avocados are similar. They have some saturated fat, but they have more monounsaturated fat, which offsets the inflammatory saturated fat. So thereby they are anti-inflammatory. Oily fish has what in it? Have you been paying attention? Omega-3 and omega-3s. So EPA and DHA. And by virtue of the omega-3, it's going to be anti-inflammatory. Nuts, and kind of God built us a pretty perfect system. Nuts are a part of that system. And if you look at most nuts, they will have more anti-inflammatory fat than more anti-inflammatory fat going down than inflammatory fat. So nuts are a really well-balanced thing that, it's almost a perfect food. So nuts are a very, very good food source for us. But always check them and make sure that you've got more monounsaturated fat than saturated fat, and pay attention to the omega-3, omega-6 balance in nuts, because you want to keep that at 1-to-1, omega-3 to omega-6, 1-to-1 to 1-to-4. We don't want to get over 1-to-4. And again, we're at 1-to-40 right now. So broccoli, again, you can kind of go down this list, but for the most part, at least the first four there are anti-inflammatory because of the fats they have in them, which build anti-inflammatory endocannabinoids, which is cool beans, right? And this is why we talk so much about the endocannabinoid system as our master regulatory system. As we understand this system, you have a lot more power over your health, which is really cool. All right. So is there a tie-in, let's say, between food and the things that we eat and the health and our endocannabinoid system? And can we eat for our endocannabinoid system? Yes, we can absolutely eat for our endocannabinoid system. Olive oil is a great thing to eat for your endocannabinoid system. Avocados, oily fish. I prefer that you get your omega-3s from nuts like chia seeds and things like that. But all four of these things right here are the first things on this list are just beautiful things to eat for your endocannabinoid system. Okay, this is my hero, man. So if you want to know, well, who does Chip listen to, and where does Chip get his a lot of his information, and who does Chip really go to when he wants to solve a problem? This fella, DiMarzio. So this guy to me is the absolute top-notch endocannabinoid researcher in the world. He puts out tons of studies and tons of information. He's the shiz in my mind. And again, I likely study this almost as much as he does. But he is a knowledgeable cat, and he really is helping a lot of other researchers understand how the system works. And it's kind of the top of the dog pile, let's say. So I want to read you this about the gut biome, which is the GU biome, and then the endocannabinoid biome. And you have a soup of endocannabinoids that literally get made in your gut as you eat food. So as you eat dietary fat, well, guess what happens? Dietary fat gets converted into endocannabinoids in your gut, in your intestinal lumen, all through your digestive. So do these interact, and could things get screwed up? So could our ability to, let's say, absorb omega-3 fatty acids be impacted by the state of the biome? It could be. Certainly our ability, let's say, to make certain endocannabinoids are absolutely affected by the biome and altered by the biome. Okay, so let's read this through. Indeed, ever-increasing evidence exists in support of the possibility that the gut biome controls the endocannabinoid biome signaling and function. This is shown, for example, by the fact that germ-free or antibiotic-treated mice present with different concentrations of endocannabinoid biome receptors and or mediators in both the gut and brain in a manner reversed or attenuated by fecal microbiotic transfer from conventionally raised mice. So what this is saying is, if I have a mouse that doesn't have a biome, his endocannabinoids expressions in his gut is going to be different than a mouse that does have a biome. And even that mouse that doesn't have a biome, I can poop transfer a biome to him, and that's going to conformationally change the nature of the endocannabinoid kind of system and expression in the biome. All right. So the microbiota definitely alter our endocannabinoid status. Now, conversely, several studies have shown that the endocannabinoid biome mediators, such as NEAs. So what are NEAs? NEAs are dietary fats, ethynylamines, basically. So these conjugated endocannabinoids, and 2-MAGs can directly alter fecal microbiota composition in vitro, clearly via endocannabinoid molecular targets present in bacteria, and in body, as for example, in mice with genetically impaired inactivation of 2-MAGs with potential functional consequences ranging from the control of intestinal inflammation to high-fat diet. So what they're saying is that they can introduce certain dietary fats or certain raw ethanol amines to these mice, and they will change the biome. That basically their poop will change, so they'll get a clear evidence of a change. So this is awesome. This is great news because, again, one of the problems that we'll begin to see over time is that, in the literature right now, the biome is our friend, right? So it's, oh, the gut biome, it's our helpful friend and it should be right here with us. And no, 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 no. In what world do you need fleas and ticks all over you? I don't buy that. So I think we need a biome right now. The biome is helping us right now, but we need to understand what that biome is doing and how that biome is kind of conformationally changing things like the endocannabinoid system to benefit it, not you. Okay. It's a parasite. It's made up of parasites that are eating you and conformationally changing you to their benefit, not your benefit. So as we begin to understand this more and more, we'll be able to more and more change the biome. And it, like right now, there's a type of, allegedly good bacteria that's in the Clostridium species that's not good bacteria. E. coli is potentially not good bacteria. There's a lot of things, let's say, that crawl around in your gut that aren't helpful to you. They're pathogenic. They're trying to live off you. They're not there to help. They're there to eat off of you. All right. Although these findings support the existence of direct influence of the gut biome with the endocannabinoid biome and vice versa, further studies will be required. Yeah, that's what we always do. So we do need to study this more. But the cool thing is you can play with this at home. And this is the very thing that I'm saying is that by virtue of what Damasio is finding here, that if you increase your consumption of omega-3 fatty acids, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to set a less of an inflammatory state. You're going to begin to configure your gut biome in a more healthy way as you eat those non-inflammatory foods, again, that impact the endocannabinoid system. Well, guess what's happening? You're altering that biome to be more, let's say, commiserate with the endocannabinoid system. And, you're altering that biome in a way that's better for you, let's just say. So anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for joining me here on this exciting version of Chip Talks. And we'll be back next Friday with another exciting version of Chip Talks. See you guys. Bye.